Hey there, everyone. It's Christy, and this is pretty much the last time I'm going to talk to you because this episode is called Flying a Wall because I'm talking to Kevin and not you guys. So we were already talking before we got started, and Kevin was relating the story of a comment that was left on one of his videos with somebody. You want to start from the beginning and
well, basically, it was an ultra kind of a patriotic American, but as a Poe. So it was clearly like, because at one point it's going about, was it Jeebus spoke American or something? So one of his lists. And the other one was, America's so great that we've got America B. It's called Canada.
There you go.
I quite like that. The idea that you've got like a backup America, just in case.
Yeah, it's like an extension room that if you need to use it.
Well, I like to think of Canada as America's top hat.
There you go. And so I became, when I came to the UK and actually started to meet more Canadians in the UK than I'd met in the States, I quickly learned that it was better to ask people if they were from North America rather than from the States, because people with Canadian accents sound a lot like Americans. They don't like to be mistook for Americans.
Same with Americans and Kiwis. Always ask whether they're from New Zealand, because an Aussie will not be offended. Whereas if you get the other way around and you ask a New Zealander if they're from Australia, they will get angry.
Yeah, that's true.
The delightful little brother syndrome that they've got there.
Which Flight of the Conchords does a good job of incorporating.
Oh, Flight of the Conchords is amazing, yeah.
Those guys are
the episode, have you seen the episode where they go to the Australian consulate?
Yes, and they have the gig.
Yes, very, very good.
Lots of that tension there.
Yeah.
So,
you should all go and illegally download that immediately.
I actually think, well, yeah, there's also just Flight of the Conchords songs on YouTube that people can watch that haven't been taken down, at least. So people should check them out.
Because that's a really big show, and it sells lots of DVDs and stuff, and you would think it would be taken down. Like there's like I was trying to download the other day, put 100% legally, of course. I would never break the law. Breaking Bad. I was going to re-watch it, but the first series, I couldn't find the first series anywhere. It's been totally taken down, it seems.
I'm sure they're probably not to you.
Yeah, possibly. Anyway, yeah, we were going to talk about Bernie Sanders, or I was going to rant and you were going to stand on the sideline, possibly egging me on. I don't know. Yeah, but anyway, to explain, before I'll preface all this by saying I like Bernie Sanders by and large. I like the man's politics, and in terms of certainly within my lifetime, he's by far the most like my own politics that any serious US presidential candidate has ever been. And I'd like to see him win as a symbol of something, but ultimately one of the problems I have with this candidacy is that ultimately he's not going to fucking get anywhere. Look how moderate Barack Obama has been and the obstructionism he's faced. Now, okay, there's always, you have to bear in mind the fact that they're playing to their constituent by, not by standing up to the black guy. There's a lot of racism involved in that, which Bernie Sanders wouldn't necessarily face. But you've then got the, by American standards, quite, not necessarily extreme, but certainly very very left-wing policies, which he's got no chance of ever enacting. It's never going to fucking happen. In the same way that many of the right-wing, the extreme sort of right-wing stuff that's been pushed by some of the Republicans, they know is never going to get passed. It's just not going to fucking happen. And rightly so. That's you've got genuine checks and balances, unlike here, where basically if you've got a big enough majority or a shit enough opponent, you can do whatever the fuck you like. I've totally forgot. I've distracted myself with nonsense now. Are you aware you're doing that live now? Your volume's totally gone.
There we go. You were saying that you like Bernie, as I was being quiet in the background while you were talking, so in case I made any noise.
Fine. But you realised that what you were doing live.
Yeah, but off air. Anyway, Bernie was...
Hang on, so your camera wasn't showing then?
No.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. Well, we'll leave that as a fucking secret.
Yeah, that'll be the stuff of myths now. What was going on that Kevin could see Christy doing that she was doing off camera?
Well, you know it's going to end up being some sort of fucking sexual misdeed.
Yes, of course.
Definitely going to be the thing.
Yeah.
Look, you know what? I'm not going to quash those rumours. I'm just going to leave it out there. Anyway, Bernie Sanders, yes. The Bernie Sanders campaign and the hardcore supporters have fucking annoyed me, certainly over the last couple of weeks. And I've made a couple of videos about this. And it's not because I want Hillary to win necessarily, other than the fact that I think she can win a general election and he can't. But that, again, sort of by the by, let's go with the principle of it and all the rest of it. But the thing that, several things have annoyed me. One, I don't quite get why Hillary Clinton is so popular with African Americans, but the fact is she is. And Bernie Sanders, in order to try and win them round, has been pandering in the most ridiculous way, which again, we were discussing this off air, the idea of all the rest of the campaigns are shit, but at least they're sort of open about it. They're not pretending to be this high-minded political revolution shit. I mean, to a degree, they're all pretending to be outsiders, even though none of them really are. But Bernie Sanders is doing that. He's pretending to be those things, and he's falling into the same traps. And that's fine, because that's politics. But don't pretend you're doing anything else, you know? And also, I saw a fucking hideous quote from last year when he was going about Americans should be proud to have gotten past racism. When did that happen? I didn't fucking notice that amongst, you know, the piles of fucking black corpses at the hands of the American police forces. So that's sort of nonsense. And in the arrogance of, well, black people should vote for him because of X, Y, and Z. What do you mean they should? Who gets to decide that? And it's this kind of ideological purity test shit, which he himself wouldn't pass. Look at his voting record on gun rights, for instance. There's no way that you could call anything like that progressive. But yet he and his supporters get to define what progressive means, apparently, to the exclusion of virtually everyone. Because no one, that's the thing with purity tests. They're sort of almost set up that you can't really pass them. And that, for me, winds me up no end. It really does.
Purity test is certainly one of the things that helped bring down the GOP.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. To a degree, you can see it's been fun watching Donald Trump try and deal with the Pope. Like, why would you? What? In essence, basically, don't take him on. I don't see that you can really win that battle, to be honest. But he's quite right. He's not Christian. But then again, I would argue that the Pope living in a massive palace in Rome isn't particularly Christ-like either. But
yeah, that's very true. I think, you know, again, I don't pay a lot of attention to the Democratic primary because just following the Republicans takes up enough of my time, and because I'm not looking for information because I had made up my mind, and I'm very happy with how with the decision I've made. But it does sort of like I don't understand this notion of political revolution, this phrase being tossed around, because it's not like electing a president is going to really change the structure of political gridlock in Washington right now.
Yeah.
You know, you're still going to have the House dominated by Republicans because of the gerrymandering and the way that's skewed, unless there's a really massive turnout against someone like Trump and they actually manage to flip the House. But, you know, the Senate might go, the House won't. So how is Bernie, someone asked the question, you know, Bernie says he wants to offer free university tuition, which obviously living in Germany, I know the benefits of and I support. But how is he going to get Republican governors in Wisconsin to enact that? They're going to claim 10th Amendment rights. How is he going to get that past the Congress?
Yeah,
so,
wasn't it? It came up in the town hall, wasn't it? That was they on day one. He's asking each governor of the union to come up with $32 million for this plan of his or something. You think they're just not going to do that. They're not going to give you a penny. A lot of the Republicans aren't going to give you a fucking penny towards that.
They won't expand Medicaid to poor people, even when it's funded by the federal government.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's 100% funded, and then it goes down to like 90%, and they're turning down free money, and people in their own states are being sick and dying because they're refusing to expand access to Medicaid.
Well, that's on a related note. You were saying you don't necessarily follow the Democratic primaries that well. I haven't been following because of my dealings with the Bernie bros, which I'll get onto in a moment. I've been sort of mainly focused on the Democratic side. But the Republicans, some of the bits I've caught, like the town hall, the CNN town halls, the last couple of nights, some of the stuff coming out is fucking terrifying. When you think of these, they're within an ace, potentially one of them, of becoming president. And obviously, you know, they're going extreme and they'll roll back towards the centre. But some of these people are genuinely quite worrying. Ted Cruz is a fucking scary individual. You look into some of the stuff he said on religion, because he and his father are Dominionists, I believe. Essentially Christian versions of Islamists, in essence. It's political Christianity, which is at least honest, because that's what the Republican Party have been doing for the last fucking 40 years. But at least they're honest about it, in essence. And going on about enforcing Judeo-Christian values. You're a constitutional lawyer. What are you talking about? Enforcing Judeo-Christian values? Since when has that been part of American creed? It's absolute fucking madness. But yeah, he's really serious about it.
I'll do you one better, because I'll combine this this information with some other things going on in American politics. I think you mentioned off air the Pope thing with Trump. But so yeah, I go and I have certain news sources that I always check, and putting together bits and pieces of information. So I think it was the Hill had a piece that was covering what's called like the Gideon campaign or the Gideon something in South Carolina, where Ted Cruz has organized a whole bunch of like 300 pastors, and they call themselves like the 300. And the idea is that they're going to use their influence at their mega churches because they read the Bible. One guy said, I read the Bible. When I read the Bible, Ted Cruz is the best candidate. They're going out to promote his candidacy and try to get their followers at his church to vote for Ted on the basis of their Christian beliefs. Yet when the Pope makes a comment that a Christian wouldn't build a wall between Mexico and the States, these same evangelicals who don't like the Pope want to come out and say, you can't judge a man's Christianity, you can't judge a man's Christianity by his actions. And who are you to say, who is a Christian, who isn't a Christian, and who should be, in this case with Trump, who should be president? When that's exactly what they're doing by reading the Bible and picking out Ted Cruz and promoting him, not for they're judging his Christianity as being acceptable and then using that as a reason to advocate for him being elected president. So it's just like the hypocrisy in their minds of who's fit and capable of judging these things, and also what qualifications make someone a good president is typically Republican logic.
Well, in terms of hypocrisy, nothing gets better than Donald Trump saying it would be wrong of the Pope to call into question his faith, when Donald Trump, up until relatively recently, was a birther. And the cornerstone of birtherism is that Barry Soato, or whatever the fuck he was supposed to be called, was a Muslim born in Kenya, whereas actually he was, a Christian guy born in Hawaii. So the hypocrisy that he's now saying it's not okay to judge someone's, to question someone's belief, even though he's been, I personally don't think he's massively religious, but for political reasons has been going to Christian churches virtually all of his fucking life. Like, it's just, and fuck you. Also, actually, one point I do have to say, to commend, of all people, Jeb Bush. He did say one actually decent thing last night about the whole Pope-Trump debacle thing. He was going about, I don't know whether Donald Trump is a Christian or not, and I don't really care. It doesn't matter. Yes, good. That's a really great thing to say. It's a shame it doesn't fucking match up with anything else you've said on religion in the past. But, yes, it shouldn't fucking matter. I don't care. The fact is, I couldn't give a fuck if he's a fucking snake handler. That's not really the point. And
it helps you to be gracious when you're losing, when you're so far behind that you don't have a chance.
Not just that, but when you've spent money untold on a dozen votes or whatever. What was the statistic? It was an amazing one about the amount of dollars per vote.
4,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, more reporting.
You could have just given them half. You could have given each of those voters half that money and saved half your fucking money in total, and they'd have gone and voted. You could have literally bribed them for less.
He's running out of money. His super PAC announced, I think, before Donald Trump got in, that they had 114 million on that they had raised, and the reporting in Politico that I just read today said that the PAC has 15 million left.
Oh.
And that Jeb Bush is running out of the hard money, the direct donations that actually go to his campaign, and that there's real serious talk about whether or not he's going to continue if he places 4th or 5th in South Carolina. So,
well, yeah, exactly. And the field did have to thin at some point, and that's, I think, hopefully when you'll see a coalition around one other person, and Trump will hopefully. I mean, I still can't believe he's anywhere near leading, let alone leading by a mile in some polls. It's ridiculous. Like, Ted Cruz, a scary guy, but he's an actual politician. That's fine. I got no problem there. You figure that even though his policies are awful, he could actually govern. That would be a thing. Whereas, I mean, Donald Trump, what a diplomat. You want Donald Trump to be your leading diplomat? Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, if you think about it, in terms of the United States, Republican self-identifiers are about 28% of the total population. And of that 28%, about 30% support Donald Trump, and another 18% support Ted Cruz. So you're really looking at maybe 14% of the total population. But because they're the ones who are politically active, that is where the political decisions are being made.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I've no doubt that if he ever did get to the general, he'd get his ass handed to him, unless something crazy like, say, Hillary gets there and there's some more emails and they're really damning and X, Y, and Z. Unless some scandal occurs with whomever he's against, I'm sure he'll get absolutely trounced. Because,
all I know is it's a fascinating race. That's all I know.
It's fascinating to watch. And if it weren't serious, it would make for great drama. But it's an actually serious thing, which could fuck things up. And also, I think it would be remiss of us not to mention the passing of arguably one of the biggest pricks in recent American history, that being Antonin Scalia.
Yeah, I saw the news and I just went, oh, well, there's an opening.
I'll be honest. Now. I think you're a classier person than I, because I chuckled my bollocks off. I was really pleased because I mean, I get that you shouldn't just sort of mock people, and I wouldn't go up to his grieving widow or whatever and like mock her to her face. But frankly, no one's ever going to hear of me saying anything about him, and he was a prick. So fuck him. Like just because he's died, that doesn't sanctify anything. He was a fucking homophobic piece of shit. Fuck the guy. I'm glad he's dead. America and the world is a slightly better place for it.
I did have the thought that we had a bunch of really good guys die in the first part of the year, and it was good to see somebody that died that wasn't on that good guy list.
Exactly. Yin and yang, a bit of fucking balance restored to the world. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that was, of course, it's created a whole other drama, but yeah, at least there won't be, I mean, he was homophobic, he was not a good jurist, he was not a constitutional originalist. For instance, his decision on keeping guns in your home as self-defense is somehow in the Constitution, when the fact is that the reason why we have the Second Amendment, that I saw the video on this recently, that documented it, sort of the process, the history of it, was because when the federal government was formed, it took all the powers of the military into itself. The states didn't have armies when they did individually under the previous form. The government, or the federal government, took that power over. But slaveholders in the South were worried about their ability to put down slave rebellions. So what they did was they lobbied for this amendment that would allow them to keep militias in order to repress any attempts by the slaves to free themselves. And that's the basis of the Second Amendment. That's why it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to, you know, whatever the rest of the phrase is, because I'm just like, I don't memorize all the amendments. But yeah, that well-regulated militia was referring to the state militias in order to suppress slave revolts. So it has nothing to do with personal defense in your home.
And going back to Republican hypocrisy, they're going about, oh well, if we allow Obama to do what he's constitutionally fucking allowed in, you know, his job is to put someone fucking forward. Anyway, if we allow him to do that, he's going to put a liberal activist judge in, and then sing the praises of Scalia, who was a conservative activist judge in essence. You think, what? How fucking ridiculous is that? You can't. How can you well, obviously you know why they're doing it, but it's still a disgusting hypocrisy. And the fact that, you know, if they were in Obama's shoes, they would be doing exactly what he's doing. And
yeah, Ben Carson actually was asked if it was a Republican president in office right now and a Supreme Court justice had died, do you think the candidates would oppose him putting forward a nominee? And he went, no, I don't think they would.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's honestly like that means he definitely won't get the candidacy. And of course he's black. I mean, and of course he's completely and utterly unqualified for the position. But other than that, he's got everything going for the kid, you know. And the fact that he thought the fucking pyramids were grain silo. Of course they were. Of course they were, Ben. Well done.
He had a lot of really good discussions with Hamas.
Oh,
Hamas.
yeah,
Hamas.
Yeah, Hamas. Yeah.
Yes,
Brilliant.
Hamas.
Absolutely brilliant. But then again, but that's the kind of foreign policy experience that might just get you back in the race, Ben. Focus on the hummus, and you'd probably be all right.
Yeah, well,
did you see that? It was a couple of weeks ago. The Republican primary voters were polled as to their willingness for the Americans to bomb Agrabah, and some like 70% of them said they would. But for those who don't know, Agrabah is the fantasy land in which Aladdin lives, the mythical land. So that's the kind of foreign policy knowledge we're dealing with as a base, you know.
Yeah, and also the guys who will tweet out pictures of guns with just the word America underneath them.
Yeah. Oh God, yes. Well, for some people, it clearly is intrinsically linked. You know, the idea of gun ownership is intrinsically linked with national or with American nationalism or whatever, and that's really worrying. But I mean, to put to bed the one argument that really annoys me about keeping tyrannical government in check, you do realise the American government's got more fucking drones than you could ever deal with. They'd never have to get a soldier close enough to you for you to use your gun upon that tyrannical government's army. They could just drone strike your street tomorrow. It's nonsense. That was a tangent, but it popped into my head, so I thought unleash. Because
well, it does tie into the Republican race because it was about Jeb Bush. I brought it up, but also if we want to talk about what a scumbag Ted Cruz is, we can talk about the way that his campaign took a photoshopped image of like two people shaking hands, and then photoshopped Barack Obama's head and Marco Rubio's head onto it and send it out as a mailer to make it look. And then they said something about like the Rubio or the Obama Rubio trade pact, and yeah, he just like photoshopped heads onto bodies and sent it out.
Surely not from the campaign that told us that Ben Carson 2 fucking weeks ago was definitely pulling out of the race. Was it that same campaign? Yeah.
That same scumbag, yeah, definitely, yeah, precisely. So
yes, he really is. I mean, I don't like agreeing with Donald Trump, but he really is one of the most dishonest people in the fucking world.
Yeah, there's a reason why nobody likes him.
Yeah,
he's an asshole. I mean, he manages to get a hardcore base that he's duping, because you want to talk about somebody whose actions don't match up to their words. There's nothing in the Ten Commandments about not building walls. There is stuff in the Ten Commandments about not bearing false witness against people.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Ted.
And not just that, but his nonsense about one of his things about one of his great successes apparently as the Solicitor General of Texas was keeping a Ten Commandments monument outside of a courthouse. Oh, well done, Ted. That was time well fucking spent. Then. What? Is there really nothing better you could have been doing with that time? But anyway, yes, he's unbearably creepy as well, and Canadian. I've got no problem. I don't think there should be a barrier to it. If the American people want someone from Uzbekistan and they vote for him, or her, it shouldn't matter to me. I don't really give a fuck. And apparently he is, a naturalized American citizen because of his mother's birth or whatever. Although I did tweet out something which I thought was quite funny about when he was explaining that about he classifies as an American because his mum was an American. Does that mean he has an anchor mummy? Is that his?
Trump called him an anchor baby.
Yeah, ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering why the MRAs haven't picked up on that and demand that that paternity be a basis for citizenship, not just your mother.
Well, yeah, of all the slightly weird things that they do, that might actually be something positive. So I don't.
Actually, I think it might work for in the States, but I have to check that because it might be either one of your parents. I don't. But how do you do? Just legally say it, or do you have to provide proof? I don't know. But I guess with the mother being the American citizen, you can't have any doubt. Whereas I don't know the law on this, so I might have just said something wrong. I'll have to check now to see if citizenship.
I don't know, but his conflating of what Rafael Cruz and his wife were doing in Canada with the idea that American servicemen, the reason that rule's in place, if American servicemen's abroad serving and they're
John McCain was born on a base in Panama.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and that's clearly fine. Okay, fine. But what was his father serving in the American army in Canada? No, you're a Canadian. And again, I've got no problem with that. But you're a member of a party who had a very, very significant problem with an obviously American-born guy who was lied about being born in Kenya, whereas you were definitely not born in America. What the fuck? Oh, anyway.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with passing on your citizenship to your kids. I think that's a natural thing that parents should and ought be able to do. But yeah, just the fact that it's Ted Cruz being hoisted on that petard is so delicious.
Well, exactly, yeah. If you're going to play into that base, fuck you, basically. Yeah, like you said, hoisted by your own petard. That's precisely what's happening.
It's always nice to see him dangling.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So speaking of trolling.
Were we?
Well, we're talking about, I was thinking about the way that Ted Cruz was trolling Marco Rubio by Photoshop.
Oh, yes, okay. I thought, for a second there, I was thinking, well, she has stretched for that segue significantly. I don't know what the fuck.
That's because I was paying attention to the conversation going, oh, I could use that as a segue. And then we kept talking and went, I got to get back to that segue.
Well, there we go. Well, I think that was smooth. I don't think me pulling you up for it helped at all, but there we go. Cool.
But yeah, so we were going to also bring up my exciting week on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I guess
that's a thing now. That's a thing. People have exciting weeks on Twitter. Do you remember the days before that was a thing? Where people did outside stuff with real people.
I saw something.
I had the most amazing day on Facebook. Okay.
Yeah, there was a Facebook meme that went around that said, I used to wish that I could read other people's minds, and then I joined Facebook, and now I don't feel that bothered anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Exactly.
just see whatever dumb things anybody's thinking. But yeah, so I had a tweet was tweeted at me inside of a wall of other tweets and retweets from people I'd never heard of, and had an exchange that clearly there was a conversation going on that I was only nominally part of, but basically my part was being argued for me by somebody else without my knowledge. And I kind of went, yeah, I should probably document this because this is really strange and odd, and also cyberbullying and being an asshole. And yeah, just for the record, put down what the facts were, include my knowledge of the Cologne attacks well before and having done a video on it. And in the video, I said that only a few of the people were identified as refugees because that's been basically the information out there at the time. So I was well aware of the facts, not just accepting something on the basis of one report because it confirmed a bias that I didn't even understand what the bias I was supposed to have held was. And yeah, they had some really, really positive reactions. It's gotten almost over 800 views almost in the first 24 hours. So yeah, and then I blocked him because obviously if this is how he's going to interact with me, he's just demonstrated the ability. He wants to just set traps. So
yeah, I don't think you mentioned who you were actually engaging with.
Oh, right. Yes, Sargon. I assume that everyone who's watching this has probably watched that, but for those of you who haven't, there's a video called Sargon of Akkad, his castle of confirmation bias, where I show the little delusional world he's built up for himself that he occupies.
Really has. In my research for a video, which will be coming up hopefully in the next week or two, I don't know, I'm a lazy fucker, it could be weeks away, who knows. I was listening to a 3-hour fucking live stream he did with somebody, and he was going on about the way in which feminists, because basically the whole point of the anti-feminists are making is we've ignored the Cologne attacks because we're in league with Islamists, apparently, and we love Islam. No, we just don't despise brown people the way you do. Like, a point I made in the video I did, basically saying I don't talk about these things so much because loads of people already are. That was the basic point I was making. But I hold the consistent position that I despise all rapists, regardless of colour, creed, religion, all the rest of it. You only care about it when it's Muslims doing it, or when it's people you can tag as immigrants, even though you have no idea whether they are, well, they're immigrants in as much as they're from North Africa, but you don't know that they're actually asylum seekers or whatever. You don't know their status. But you can tag that on. You can say they're all Syrians, even though was it 2 or 3 of them were actually Syrians. And again, try and tie it into this. Oh, we can't allow the Syrians in because they're all rapists, even though you have no evidence for that whatsoever. And that's ultimately why you should wait for further actual confirmation of these things, rather than just going, well, brown people from Syria, and then that's that. And he was in this live stream anyway. He was going about how terrible it is. The feminists are totally ignoring this story. No, they're not. The only reason you've heard about it is because feminists kicked up a stink in the first place, you prick. What are you talking about? I mean, I didn't make a video about it because you did a video and it was better than anything I could have done. I had nothing to add to it. So I just tweeted out your video. There you go. That's fine, you know.
Well, just the assumption that there aren't things being done because he hasn't made an effort to look for it. That's just basically what I think is his modus operandi. And it's not that I'm speculating. It's just from watching him on this with the Skeptic Feminists and I watched the thing that the two of you talk and other things that have been shown of him. He makes these blanket statements. Feminists do this. Feminists think this. Feminists say this. Who are these fucking feminists?
And not just that, but he speaks about them. In the whole thing with Steve Shives, he was trying to say, I'm educated. And yeah, okay, he's read a few books. But he treats them, again, in the way that racists treat Muslims as a race, even though they're not a race. Essentially, they treat feminists the same way as if it's all a monolith. You realise that there are loads of feminists I utterly despise because of their trans exclusionary ways or whatever, right? I fucking hate them. So don't lump me in with them. We're not a monolith. It's not one group of people you're dealing with here. So
and
to say,
if he could actually cite articles, if he could, cite specific instances with people's names, that would be one thing. But he just lumps everything into feminists. Yeah,
because ultimately he's not doing honest discourse. He's doing pandering. He's worked out that, and again, as with hate preachers of all sorts, and when I say hate preachers, he's not as bad as like the crazy people trying to get people to fucking blow themselves up on buses. But essentially, he's doing the same. It's the same process. He's found a gullible, large enough constituent that he can milk, And he's going, and he's doing. And to be fair to him, if you ignore the morality of that, he's doing exceptionally well. Bravo! But once you put the morality back into it, you think you're a scumbag, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it's just intellectual integrity to look things up, go for the facts, to provide sources of experts, people that know what they're talking about, you know, provide them the latest news. And actually, I checked on the story today, and it's really confusing what the story around the status is, because the most recent one I saw was that the guy, Bremer, came out and said, no, some of them are refugees. So clearly this is like, nobody knows the facts on this, or the reporting is off, and we really need to wait to see the dust clear before we can make any pronouncements.
Exactly, yeah, and that's why you shouldn't go off, you know, with all guns blazing on one report of a clearly very complex fucking situation. Well, what I don't get, I know, but maybe you might be able to tell us more, living, you know, in the city or whatever. What's going on there? Because it seems so strange that the police don't know, or that the prosecutor doesn't know the status of these people. You think, well, someone must do, surely.
I can only go by the news reports. So I'm kind of waiting for the dust to clear and for a more coherent timeline of what information the government is able to provide to people. If they have it, you know, how do they get the information? How long does it take? I don't know any of these things, which is why I criticized in my tweet response to it that people should be, you know, led by the facts and not just by, you know, con art clickbait videos. But yeah, I'm kind of in the same place. Like, what the hell? What, you know, it's not helping the situation to have this lack of clarity, because if there are refugees involved or not, then the facts need to come out, because we can deal with them. But we need to know what the facts are, so that when people say all of these mass rapes committed by refugees, you can go, A, it was multiple rapes and a mass sex attack, and only 2 or 3 or 7. Because not, you know, just because there were 2 Syrians in the list doesn't necessarily mean the Syrians in the list were refugees. Maybe people from other countries were refugees that weren't Syrians but had that category. Until these numbers and this information becomes clearer, yeah, everyone should just keep stum.
Basically, yes. But that doesn't, you know, that doesn't bring in the clickbait dollars, does it?
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what's taking place there. And he loves taking on people like yourself, because you're, you know, you are relatively sort of well-known feminist. You live in Germany and all the rest of it, and you haven't bought completely hook, line, and sinker into the lie. So you're the perfect person to set up to just either straw man or quote mine, or just generally play the kind of semi-fool, in essence, which is what he did in that whole in that tweet. And people can go and watch the video. I don't know if you'll link it below. I'll probably link it below my one, because we've talked about it now. My copy of this. In that Twitter exchange, his whole thing was just essentially making shit up, it seems, and implying things that you didn't say or that you don't believe.
Yeah, he asked me one question, which was, how accurate is this news, or do you think this headline is accurate? That was the only question in the exchange that I can recall, because there were obviously a lot of tweets, but there were only some that I saw and only a few that are replied to, and it was my lunch hour, and I was like, you know, he can maybe sit around all day and do this and tweet it out to his followers and try to feel good because people are buying into his bullshit narrative that he's making up. But I actually have a life. So, you know, like, I had a little bit, and then I went back and I looked at all the things that he tweeted at me, and the meme and things. I was like, he's having a conversation in his head with himself, with the person he's invented, not actually going by the comment I made to the tweet and the answer I gave him. That had nothing to do with what he had. And actually, I think when I went back, someone had sent him something, and I didn't look what it was, but his reply to that was, oh no, I was going to get out, you're going to ruin her confirmation bias. So clearly he had like this agenda, this whole sort of trap that he was supposed to set about confirmation bias, but it failed spectacularly because I go by news reports. So, and of course, not knowing
ironically enough, in its own way, he's fallen prey to Sargon's law there.
Yeah, I heard about this. Can you tell me what Sargon's law is?
Sargon's law basically is if you get into a battle with an SJW feminazi or whatever, the thing that they accuse you of is the thing that they are themselves guilty of, and they're using smoke screen to protect themselves from that accusation. So he's calling you, saying you've got confirmation bias in order to cover up his own confirmation bias.
I think Sargon should do a video on Sargon's law on himself and whether or not he's guilty based on his interactions with me.
Oh, I think Sargon should just fuck off. That,
You know, I really just want him to start using Google and looking things up and citing sources for every empirical claim he makes. When I write an article for a journal, if I make, unless it's something like, an election took place in 2010, if I'm making a statement about, say, what the polling numbers were on a certain day, I cite my source. When I quote somebody's ideas, I cite my source. And if he would just actually make the effort to get citations and sources for everything he says, that would be enough for me.
Yeah, but you're a feminazi, so your opinion doesn't count on anything. So that's literally the be all and end all of some of their arguments I've seen. I've seen like, you're an SJW, game over.
Owned.
Wrecked. Spell REKT. Apparently that's a thing now. There you go.
Yeah. So that was there's no point in interacting with Sargon, and all he did was confirm why Steve Shives doesn't interact with him. Because if that's what he did for me, and I'd only started pointing out his deficiencies in claiming to speak for feminism when not knowing that parental rights are still attainable by rapists in the States, when he asked the skeptic feminist, why do we need feminism in the West? The fact that he doesn't know that and yet still goes on and on about Western feminism. If he set up this whole elaborate confirmation bias trap on Twitter for me after me criticizing him for that, imagine all of the elaborate plans he would have had for Steve. And he wouldn't, of course, listen to anything Steve said because it wouldn't have been about the communication. It would have been all toward his fans. That's his show. That's his,
Yeah, exactly. That's his act. Absolutely, yeah. But to bring it back to your point about first world feminists, and they always do this. The fallacy of relative privation is just one of their absolute fucking key cornerstone pieces of fallacious bullshit. And he does this all the time. But again, Sargon's law to a degree, depending on how you word it, I suppose, that he always goes on about, first world problems, first world fucking problems. Yet he was one of the leaders of Gamergate, a revolt around video game journalism.
And it's completely selective service. That guys have to sign up in case someday there might be a war, and in that war there might be a draft. That's oppressive too.
Oh no, but I meant specifically their cause was video game journalism. You think, I don't know that there are many sub-Saharan kids who have fucking been orphaned by AIDS that give a fuck about Kotaku in action or something. They don't look. You're the ultimate in first world fucking problems, you fucking idiots. But yes, your point was correct, but that wasn't.
And you came back on your point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So yeah, that's kind of basically that was my. I documented it. I blocked him. I moved on. So.
Yeah, well, I haven't blocked him because I'm one of the chosen few. He follows me back on Twitter, and it's great because occasionally, like, he's a genuinely quite big YouTube. He's got like 250,000 fucking people. But yeah, if I tweet at him, and I often just tweet sort of random sort of not abuse as such, but just poking him slightly. Just I get a little stick and I just poke him a little bit, and he always reacts. It's brilliant. He's like I point him maybe. If you make a video with the name Sargon of Akkad in the title, he's like a crow. He sees the shiny thing and he can't avoid but go for the shiny thing. And so you just put your name in it and you know he'll be there. You'll know he'll see it. You think, but actually a point you just made about having a real life and getting out and stuff, having other things to do. He doesn't, it seems. He basically just sits in his house being a YouTube person. So if you type in Sargon of Akkad, or if you do a video called Sargon of Akkad is a massive bell end or something, he will definitely watch it, which is brilliant. I've often thought about putting together like a video completely unrelated to him, but putting his name in the title. Just you'll have to click on it, and it'll just be me sat in a room talking about I don't know books or something. It's whatever, doesn't matter. But anyway, yeah. Another thing I wanted to. I don't know if you've been following the Roosh V situation over the course of this week. It's been quite interesting.
Well, the last I heard was that he came out and he complained because he had been doxxed, and that was I don't know if there's anything in the last couple of days. You'll have to update me.
Oh yeah, well that was fun as well. Yes, and clearly the police, when they turned up to his house, because he had been doxxed, and he was. I don't think he lives with his mother. That was slightly unfair in terms of the reporting of it. But he was temporarily living in his mother's basement.
That's right.
And he came out.
Sorry, he's been accused, hasn't he?
Accused of what, sorry?
He's been accused of rape.
Yeah. Well, yes, indeed, and quite rightly, because
I remembered.
by his own admission, he's a serial rapist. Yeah, but yeah, there's a woman in Iceland apparently who's come forward, which is he's got a book called Bang Iceland. One very notorious bit is when he takes home a drunk woman, and essentially, well, he didn't take her home as such. He follows her home and then sort of forcibly has sex with her, even though she didn't initially want to have sex, and he basically rapes her. I mean, in his own fucking words in that book, he says so. And whether this woman is that one in the actual story, who knows? I suppose that would be sort of impossible to really prove that, but we'll see what comes of it. I hope at the very least something is investigated, because ultimately he deserves to be exposed for what he is. But the thing is, and it's one of the ultimate signs for me of rape culture, the fact that a man can so brazenly boast about and sell lots of books on the back of having raped women. And that's what he's done here. Let's not fucking beat around the bush. Well, for legal reasons, he's either lied about raping loads of women, or he's actually raped loads of women and sold loads of books on the back of that. And then people say, oh, but it's illegal, so that's fine then. You know, as if that's it. Like, oh yeah, well, rapes don't happen because it's illegal. The same with murders. There are no more murders because it's illegal. Like, what? Fuck off.
It's a very interesting series of events, because, you know, it was his attempt to start these groups worldwide that got him the attention that he so desperately wanted. But the attention that he ended up getting brought so much backlash and further attention and exposure of what a scumbag he is, that, yeah, well, maybe this was the tipping point where someone felt compelled to actually step up and say what happened to her, because otherwise he was going to go around teaching, you know, promoting this book and these ideas to more men.
Yeah, well, that's what he does. I think that's the overarching point to make. It's not just that he's a fucking serial rapist and that he's boasted about that. He goes around, and arguably the more destructive thing he does, just in terms of the fucking numbers involved, is that he goes around and speaks to thousands of men, young men, impressionable, fucking angry young men. Which I understand to a degree, because I could have gone down that path. I know the experience. I know the sort of alienated feeling that a lot of those young men have. And they're very susceptible to ideas from, you know, and he seems like quite a charismatic, well-spoken chap, and he's obviously very very manipulative in a number of ways as well. So, and he goes around teaching them how to rape. It's not about like the whole shit about, oh, it's about confidence. He says, oh, I teach men confidence, and if that's all he was doing, fine, brilliant. He's teaching men to be confident around women, grand. But that's not what he's doing. He's teaching them the best way to rape and get away with it, or to harass and get away with it, or to sexually assault and get away with it. And that is phenomenally dangerous, which is, I don't generally support excluding people from a country, but I signed and advertised that petition to keep him out of Britain.
Well, yeah, because on the basis of his own admission, like you said, either he's lying and promoting himself as a serial rapist, or he actually is.
Yeah.
So why would you want to create, isn't this why that we have immigration laws, to keep potential criminals out?
Well, exactly, yeah. My whole point when someone argued about, oh, it's freedom of blah, 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 oh, fuck off. I said, we've got enough pricks here already. We don't need to import any more. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And of course, you know, if he was teaching anything related to Islam that was similar in terms of harming people, there's no way he would be allowed in. But somehow he slips under the radar because this is under the guise of getting laid.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous.
Well, you talked about the rape culture issue, and also when you talk about serial rapists, we could bring up, you know, Bill Cosby, who went for decades.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, not just that, but it's here in Britain. You had, I know it was against children as such, but essentially a culture of rape within the BBC and within the upper echelons of government for fucking decades, completely covered up. Documents randomly suddenly go missing about it as well. So even to this very day, it's being covered up. So, oh yeah, but rape it's not a thing. Definitely not a thing, because it's illegal. And that's all you need to do, is to write in law, rape is illegal. Poof, problem's gone.
Yes, I can actually can preview a little bit. Noel Plum did a video on rape culture, and if he's watching this, Noel, I know. One of the things that I'm going to raise is that in the very beginning, he basically takes the definition of rape culture and changes it into the rate of rapes. But that's not what rape culture is. We have a concept for the criminal rate in a country, or the rate of rapes. it's a numerical number, but numbers, the activities, the criminal activity associated around sexual assault and rape is different from the culture in which those activities happen.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, obviously it's not completely divorced from rape.
No, they interact, of course, yeah. They're embedded, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, but I'm just sort of clarifying for my own thought process here. It's not that they're completely divorced from each other, but in terms of how you define them intellectually, essentially they are divorced from one another, because it's not the act of rape that is the rape culture bit. It's the culture around it, and it's not every single bit of culture as well. In the same way that the phrasing of toxic masculinity is not. Certainly, I'm not saying that all of masculinity is toxic. We're saying there is a bit of it. There is a part of it. There is a strain running through it that is toxic. And we're not saying that every bit of the culture is pro fucking rape. Obviously, it is illegal. Most people are repulsed by it, obviously, but it's how it's excused away in certain situations. You have it in America all the time with sports stars, for instance. A girl comes forward to some college fucking some college quarterback or another, even from minor little fucking schools, and the woman always gets put down. Oh, you're ruining this young man's career. He raped. What the fuck? He forcibly took her and sexually assaulted her, or raped her, or whatever, drugged her, and all sorts of fucking horribleness. And but she's ruining his career. Fuck off! The kid deserves to be in prison. It's that kind of shit. That's what we mean. That's what we're talking about there.
Yeah, and another reason why we keep these things conceptually separate is because what constitutes rape has changed over time. Yeah. So, within my lifetime, marital rape was outlawed, but the last one, I think it was in the early 1990s in a southern state, where a man, if he raped his wife, she had no basis in law upon which to prosecute him. Yeah.
And well, that's actually another point about Roosh, when people say, "Oh, his thing was satire." His piece about how to stop rape, which basically said rape should be legalized on private property, right? And people say, "Oh, it's satire," blah blah blah. In order to believe that, you have to ignore everything else he's ever said on the topic, including the relegalization of a man raping his wife. So no, he's not satire. Satire would be saying something you don't believe in order to mock the thing itself. Yeah. Whereas what he's saying there is what he actually believes. And then, what was it called? Schrodinger's douchebag. Basically, the idea that the person themselves gets to decide whether they were joking about it or not, depending on the reaction they get to it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yes. Like Donald Trump does this a lot.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. If people go, well, that's disgusting, as well, it's only a joke. No, you don't get to use that defense. That's bollocks. I'm sorry. And not just that, but even if it is a joke, does that mean it means nothing? Does that mean it's utterly worthless? It has no meaning because it was a joke? No. If you go to someone's funeral and you go up to their widow and you say something hideous about, some joke about the person who's just died, that's not meaningless. That has a hell of a lot of fucking, there's a lot of symbolism, there's a lot of feeling involved there. And that's an extreme example, but the point stands across the board. Just because something is a joke doesn't mean it has no fucking meaning or no value, and can't therefore be judged as any other statement would.
And then, of course, also puts the onus, it's an attempt to try to move the responsibility from the person who made the offensive comment to the person who was offended, as if it was their fault for being offended.
That annoys me when you get, again, quote unquote, apologies from people. And they go, I'm sorry if you were offended.
Yeah.
No. No, you should be sorry for being a prick, for being an offensive dickhead. Otherwise, you're not actually sorry. You're just, if anything, you're making it worse by putting the onus, like you say, putting the onus on the person who you fucking hurt.
Yeah, because it's basically saying, like, I don't really give a fuck about you, but, and so if I hurt your feelings, I don't really care. But, if you felt bad about that, then I feel bad that you felt bad, but I'm not going to take responsibility for the fact that I did anything. But, I feel bad that you feel bad, basically. That's it. It's not like, you know what, I was wrong. I hurt you. That was wrong of me. I feel a responsibility, and I'm going to own that responsibility by apologizing. And this is another thing just about Republicans, that for being the party of personal responsibility, they often don't take any for their own words.
Yeah.
And their own policies.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, they are. But oh God, the recycling of the Planned Parenthood thing as well that they've come up with in recent days. For some reason they seem to have forgotten that was a hoax. And that
people are going to, being charged.
Yeah, exactly. The charges have been brought against the people who forged the fucking nonsense, not against the people just doing their fucking job at Planned Parenthood, But yeah, they've gone about there should be an investigation into Planned Parenthood. Why exactly? There
Because
was. They
the
found nothing. They
yeah,
made
the
shit up.
conspiracy theory, though, they have a conspiracy theory. The facts are just inconvenient to the theory. They're just advancing this discourse in order to allow them to basically make women slaves to their own reproduction again. That's the goal.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. It's really disgusting to see. Regardless of what you might think of the, like, I get that a lot of the left versus right, if we can take it that simply, is a lot to do with economics, and that's okay. That's fine. I can deal with that. But when it comes to that kind of backward, often religiously inspired social shit, it's sickening to see that in the 21st century you have candidates for a major party in the world superpower. And okay, I know that hegemony is being challenged and all the rest of it, but they're still the most, powerful, rich nation in the fucking world. Potentially the leader of the free world, saying hideous shit like they've been selling body parts and stuff. No, they haven't. No, they fucking haven't. Demonstrably, they have. Well, demonstrably, that evidence is incorrect.
But they have this narrative. Remember, I saw this in a newspaper recently that the pro-life movement is working to protect women from the violence of abortion.
What a load of old shit!
Yeah.
Oh God! And the fact that these people who are pro-bombing any brown person in the world, pro-death penalty, don't seem to mind the police gunning down black people in the streets constantly, that they call themselves pro-life.
Yeah.
Fuck off. What? I've never met more anti-life people in my life.
But they're good Christians, So what they do is backed up by God, and this is like the whole problem with religious patriarchy and these Bronze Age views that allow people to engage in terrible behavior and justify it, because somehow in their heads still religiously justify their own their sanctity or their like how sacred they are and how chosen they are by God. When I just watched the Bible Reloaded, they finished the book of Esther. In one of their recent episodes, and at the end of Esther, there was a plot to kill all the Jews, and the whole thing of it, as I hadn't read Esther before, turns on the fact that the woman helps out, and it's actually, even though it's called the Book of Esther, she has very little to do, but the tables are turned, and so although the Jews are protected, and on a certain day they're able to go out and kill anyone who was their enemy or had tried to hurt them across the Persian Empire. And so the news went out, and the Jews were very happy, and they went out and celebrated, and a bunch of people converted to Judaism because they didn't want to get killed. This is in the book. Like, a bunch of people converted. And then on the appointed day, they just went out and engaged in genocide. Just mass ethnic cleansing in the story. And then, sorry, just let me finish. And then they turned it into a national festival that they still celebrate. Now, it's about giving presents these days. It's kind of like Guy Fawkes. You're like, oh, it's about the bonfire. We don't really talk about killing of the Catholics. But it's that sort of like, it's an ethnic cleansing.
A lot of people still do talk about killing all the Catholics, to be fair. That's some people have kept that tradition going. That is definitely a thing. God almighty. But I was going to make a silly joke about, I wonder if in history since that the Book of Esther actually took place, whether any other religious organisations have thought about that as a recruitment policy. Because that would be quite effective, I think. Literally convert or die. Have any other religions done that? I don't know. I can't think.
Yes, because it's all about free will. It's about free will.
Well, actually, completely off topic, but it annoyed me this week. I've never had anything remotely approaching a decent answer to the problem of evil, and no amount of your free will bollocks is going to get past me. Because I'm sorry, if God has the power to step in and stop one of his servants on earth raping a child, how about he does that? I don't care about the free will of a child rapist, really.
Yeah,
Call
I
me
agree.
crazy.
Yeah,
I know it's completely off topic and probably quite a sour note, but fuck it had to be said. It was on my mind.
Can I take it and turn it into dark humor? And I saw a meme that said, if God didn't want Barack Obama to appoint a Supreme Court justice, Antonin Scalia would still be alive. I stand with God.
Well, I saw actually another Scalia one was claims to be pro-life but died anyway.
I did see one that said Anthony Scalia said that he wanted to be cremated, but a bunch of women are going to get together and decide what should be done with his body.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's absolutely correct. Was it the congressional committee on? And there wasn't a single fucking woman on the panel on reproductive rights.
Yeah, the contraception. Yeah, it was. I think it was a bunch of religious leaders actually.
Yeah, it's mad. Well, yeah, I suppose. Therefore, you wouldn't. I mean, I don't. Well, that's. I don't get. I know. Okay, I'm not going to tell feminists what they should and shouldn't be, but I don't get religious feminists. I don't see how those two things are really compatible, to be honest.
In my head, there's a book saying you can be a Christian, you can be a feminist, but you can't be a Christian feminist that I should write someday.
Yeah, but they do exist, and fair play. I've met many of them, and they're very lovely people. But I don't get how you square that circle.
But you can't. I mean, it's like scientists who accept all of the evidence about the origins of the universe and also think there's a God. You can't square that circle. You just have cognitive dissonance. And I would also say that Christian feminists would have that same cognitive dissonance because there's just no basis for women's basic human equality anywhere in the Bible. You have to go outside the Bible to get it, which means you're not being a Christian feminist. You're just being a feminist who happens to be a Christian, but you're not getting your feminism from your religion. You can't.
Yeah, exactly. You are a feminist in spite of your religion.
Yeah, that's it.
Because of it, yeah, absolutely. Because do not suffer a woman to teach a man or whatever. You think, oh God, there's just so much, so many disgusting elements of it. We're supposed to believe that Lot giving his daughter up to be raped by the mob, that's the good guy in town, is it?
I think the Skeptic Feminist has just mirrored Seth Andrews reading from Dan Barker. So that's like what now I referenced. So he read it, and then someone else, he wrote it. Then Dan Barker wrote it. Seth Andrews wrote it. The Skeptic Feminist mirrored it, and I just told you about it. So how many degrees of separation is that? But in the segment that they took out, it's all about it's called misogynistic, and it's a wonderful walkthrough of how degrading those texts are to women, and it all takes place within like 2.5 minutes.
Well, there's a great. I must dig it out. Actually, there's a fantastic video I saw a few weeks ago about I think it was Canadian satirist artist people, and they took a Bible and put a Quran cover on it of the Quran. So people thought, and they went and took people and showed them the really racist, violent, misogynist bits in it, and they were all appalled. And then they pulled it back and said it was the Bible, and people were like, oh, okay.
I think I saw that too. Yeah, that's good.
If it's disgusting when you think it's a Quran, surely it's still as disgusting. I mean, but those people probably, some of them went to church the next day. You know, it's disgusting.
This is the power of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the thing. The human mind can play amazing tricks, amazing gymnastics. Some people pull in their own minds. Incredible. Like the feminist religious. You know?
Yeah, I agree. So one of the things that came up as in the comment section of, I think it was that video on Sargon, because the debate in part revolved around the Cologne attacks, and in that video I talk about the correct use of language and that I really object to the phrase mass rapes being thrown around because it's not accurate and it changes the dynamic of the discussion about that event, and it's wrong. It's factually wrong. There were multiple rapes, not mass rapes. But one of the other things that, one of the skeptic feminists had written back saying, you know, it is important to use correct language and also talk about the predatory attacks on Western women. And that's something that I think I acknowledged and said that's a really good point, and it's something that really does need to be brought into the discussion, because there are things culturally within Islamic societies that view women who don't adhere to covering as sluts who are available for sex and they don't have honor. And there is a problem with cultural approaches, not cultural approaches, cultural norms like that. And I think it is worth talking about them and calling them out, because we have to address them and not just walk around them if we're going to have a truly multicultural society where everybody feels safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I would thoroughly concur with that. I don't profess to know the answers as to how you deal with those issues, but yeah, that clearly is an issue. Yeah. Yeah,
not talking about it is not a solution. I mean, we have to, if we want to find the solutions, then we need to talk about it and bring it up and start challenging the views of Western women that are held by some religious groups. And that's not just men. You know, women also will hold views of other women, or, you know, women who dress in a certain way that way too. And I think it's just about starting to identify the problem and having that discussion.
I think one of the problems around having such discussions, though, is that often you don't want to moderate, decent people don't want to appear to be one of those extremists just digging into Muslims. Even though in saying, making the points that you've just made, and I thoroughly concur with it. You don't want to appear to be one of those people, and so often it's actually those extremists who hold the conversation back because most people don't want to be like that, and they don't want Muslims to think of them in that way because they don't see Muslims as fucking evil people or whatever, and so that does actually stifle a lot of the debate involved.
But there's a larger, but it taps into the larger question of women in Islam and women in Islamic society. And
well, yeah, it's a point that's absolutely worth making. As with all three of the Abrahamic religions, the way they treat women is fucking disgraceful. Simple.
And there's an inside group problem that I think like when anti-feminists want to shake their fingers at feminists, why aren't you doing more for women in the Middle East? Because they don't problematize feminism in the West. What they're blinding themselves to is those cultural crossovers that can lead to problems when you have really sexist and bigoted and demeaning views of women coming into contact with societies where those views aren't held, and then challenging that view of women in a way that allows, I think, society to move forward. I do think that Islam needs to have a revolution, not a revolution, but a reformation.
Yes.
In terms of it needs to modernize.
Absolutely.
A big part of modernizing is how it looks at and treats women.
Well, actually, and this is a point. One of the reasons we've discussed this before about I'm going to start a petition to call on the British government to cease ties with Saudi Arabia until they improve their treatment of treatment of humans, their human rights record, and all the rest of it. Not just because of my feminist beliefs and all the rest of it, but just because I'm a humanist first and foremost, above basically fucking everything. And one of the reasons that oh fuck's sake, what was I going to say? But one of the reasons I was going to I'm going to start all of that getting that ball rolling is because actually it's our support of repressive dictatorships in that region which holds that process of reformation back, because in essence if you don't give people the space to grow those countries into much more moderate, decent places, and you essentially ensure repression on behalf of a small clique at the top, then nothing will change, because nothing really can change in essence. And the problem is, because the oil reserves, the places like Saudi Arabia, unless we do something about it, we're essentially going to be beholden to them until the economy of the world crashes with no more oil left or something.
I think there's a lot of other places. I know that there's a lot of oil in Saudi Arabia, but I'm right with you. I think that the cutting off. I mean, think about it like apartheid in South Africa. Yeah,
precisely.
It's gender apartheid.
Basically, yeah, absolutely, and not just that, but I mean, in many ways, it's actually worse than South Africa in a number of ways, because either, like you say, there's clearly a gender apartheid. The repression of political dissidents is worse than South Africa, and the republic fucking beheadings. I mean, it's barbaric beyond belief.
Yeah, we shouldn't be dealing with them.
Yeah, exactly. We absolutely should. And it's not that. By the way, and you can absolutely point out that there are other as repressive.
Definitely.
In
but if you get the Saudis and all their money.
Exactly. Saudi Arabia is the linchpin of all of that.
Yeah.
It seems, because it's essentially the whole problem of the Middle East is essentially a proxy war of Iran versus Saudi Arabia. Now, Iran, I don't know that we can do much more than we are currently doing in terms of trying to re-engage with them and all the rest of it. They're a completely different issue.
Thanks, Obama.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Obama. And again, actually, to bring it back briefly to the Republicans, they were attacking him on that.
Yeah, of course.
Oh no, we've taken them from being absolute fucking pariahs on the verge of building a nuclear bomb under George Bush to peacefully trying to reintegrate them into something like a decent top level. Again, when I say a decent nation, I don't ever mean all of the people. When I say nation, I mean like the government, the
state. Yeah, go to France and beg for planes because theirs are 30 years old, and spend a lot of money on European products.
And not just that, but it shows. I think the slightly more dovish nature of the Obama foreign policy has borne a lot of fruit. Actually, I think the way in which we've begun to take a stranglehold on Russia via economic sanctions, the way in which we've crushed much of the rebelliousness of the Iranian leadership via economic sanctions, which have essentially crippled that nation to the point where they've had to come back to the table. I think we can do the same with Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, we can't do the same with North Korea because China is essentially going to drip feed them enough to keep them alive.
Yeah, but Saudi Arabia is the perfect.
Saudi Arabia, we absolutely can, and they are the least, which is fucking up the entirety of that region because it's and it's okay. Yeah, it's not the Saudi government that are doing it, but the Saudi government are turning a blind eye to rich Saudis funding and arming ISIS, Daesh in the region, and are Saudi Arabia, the government, are openly engaged in proxy wars all across the region, including the repression in Yemen.
So you got to start somewhere, and Saudi Arabia sounds like a great place to start.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not for a second thinking it's going to change the world, but we have to try and do something at least.
Yeah.
I mean, it was doing nothing won't. Doing something might not work, but doing nothing won't.
And, you know, if you get the petition and, you know, other people make videos and maybe get a little bit of, you know, news coverage, Facebook sharing, and you might raise awareness. Somebody might learn something and become horrified and then want to join the next time you do the petition, and it'll grow and they'll share it next time.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to start somewhere. And unfortunately, there doesn't, partly because the media don't have much access to Saudi Arabia, but even the bits and bobs that come out doesn't make the news headlines anymore. Even though there are footage of the public beheadings that happen in town squares across Saudi Arabia for really petty things as well. You know, for daring to. There's a guy who's currently on as a death sentence for impugning the Prophet, for literally just saying, I don't necessarily think Muhammad was 100% true. He's still a Muslim. He's just not quite hardline enough for them, and was openly public about that. And they have things like the Police of Vice and Virtue as well, which is the organisation that if a woman leaves the house on her own, they will re-escort her back to her house because you can't be in public without a man. It's just like you say, it is a gender-based apartheid. It's as insipid.
Yeah.
Well, it's as insipid in terms of its the morality of it, but in practice, it's worse because, like I say, they've got public butcherings that happen.
Yeah, I mean, you can go the whole range. I mean, everybody could get behind this. LGBT groups, human rights groups, feminist groups, you name it. People who have, atheists, obviously, for freedom of thought. I mean, the fact is, if there's a problem in the States, I can send money to a candidate that is running against that person, or I can write them a letter. I can do something through the democratic process to try to fix things. But when it comes to Saudi Arabia, we don't have any direct power. So the best thing, I think you're right, is to try to get our governments to call on our governments to use their power, their financial weight to address really basic human rights issues.
Yeah, to head off one thing, whenever you try and engage with like a foreign power, the one argument that comes up, and it's perfectly justified in a number of cases, like with the invasion of Iraq, for instance. It's the idea that you going around telling the rest of the world how they must live and all the rest of it. I'm not engaging in cultural supremacy or anything like that. What I'm suggesting is that I want the Saudi Arabian people to actually have at least a fucking say in how that country is run, and that currently isn't happening. So actually, far from me imposing anything on the Saudi people, I want to actually free the Saudi people to decide their own fucking way.
Yeah, human rights aren't a luxury.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're a right. That's the point. Yeah, absolutely. And I think on that positive note, I think
we've been going for like an hour, just over an hour. So yeah, an hour and 10 minutes. So that's about right.
Yeah, I think that's a positive, hopeful note to finish on as well.
All right, that sounds good. Right. So thank you, Kevin. It's been good to chat with you if you want to hang around. And everyone else, I've been ignoring you because this show isn't about you, but I will stop at this point talking to Kevin to say thanks you guys for watching. And remember that I will be appearing on The Skeptic Feminist tomorrow morning. They have a link already set up, so you can set a reminder and go check that out. And yeah, that should be a nice chat as well. So thanks, Kevin, for being on.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thanks everybody else. I'm going to hit stop broadcast now and have the rest of my night. So check you guys later. Bye.